Hello and welcome to World Panorama, where we get you all the big international news stories that unfolded this week. I'm Aishwarya Kapoor with you. Here's a look at the top stories in the headlines. US-China trade talks end without a deal. Talks between the two sides to continue. Trump orders raising tariffs on almost all imports from China. Says removing tariffs depend on future negotiations. China says will retaliate. President Ramaphosa's ruling ANC party to be returned to office in South Africa, but with a reduced majority. Wins almost 58% of the ballot compared to 62% at the last general election in 2014. Anger over economy and corruption, likely reasons of eroding party's appeal. Reuters journalist jailed in Myanmar released after more than 500 days following presidential pardon. The two were jailed under the country's Official Secrets Act for reporting on a massacre of Rohingya civilians. Turkey's election board announces a rerun of the Istanbul mayoral vote after President Erdogan's ruling party lodges objection over voting irregularities. Opposition cries foul. New vote to be held on June 23rd. And at least 41 people on board a Russian passenger plane killed after it catches fire while making an emergency landing at a Moscow airport. Investigators examined black boxes for the cause of the jet fire. Survivors claim jet was struck by lightning. The biggest story this week, US and Chinese trade negotiators failed to break an impasse following 2 days of globally watched trade talks. US President Donald Trump said that talks between Washington and Beijing will continue even after the deadline passed on Friday for them to reach an agreement. As a result, the US raised the tariffs to 25% from 10% on goods from China. And in addition, Donald Trump also ordered his top officials to begin the process to raise the tariffs on almost all the imports from China, amounting to about $300 billion. Now, China says that it deeply regrets the US action and would have to take necessary countermeasures. However, Donald Trump says that US-China relations remain very strong despite the two countries being embroiled in a trade war. After months-long trade war, it seemed that China and the US were moving towards an agreement this week after several rounds of negotiations. But suddenly, it all fell apart. Forget of an agreement, there is a rapid escalation in tensions. On Friday, Donald Trump vowed to more than double tariffs on $200 billion of Chinese goods, adding that he could introduce fresh tariffs. The announcement on Twitter on Friday sent markets worldwide plummeting. The Hang Seng Index was down 1.2% and the Shanghai Composite shared 0.8% in early trading.
So I just announced that we'll increase tariffs on China. And we won't back down until China stops cheating our workers and stealing our jobs. And that's what's going to happen. Otherwise, we don't have to do business with them. We don't have to do business. We can make the product right here if we have to, like we used to. Remember? Like we used to.
From Friday midnight, the new tariffs on Chinese goods took effect, having risen to 25% from 10%. The situation could become worse still, as Trump has also warned that he could shortly introduce 25% duties on $325 billion of Chinese goods. China, however, says the escalation of trade friction was not in the interests of the people of the two countries and the people of the world.
China believes raising tariffs in the current situation is not a solution to the problem, but harmful to China, to the United States and to the whole world. So correctly way out should be to solve the practical problem in a better and principled manner, so that we can finally come to the only results of cooperations.
对中国不利，对美国也不利。
Despite the acrimony, the two sides still held talks in the US. China's trade negotiator, Vice Premier Liu He, headed to Washington to what was supposed to be among the last round of discussions with the US trade envoy, Robert Lighthizer, and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin.
President Trump likes to make noise, he likes to make big statements, but my sense is that inside the Chinese delegation there's a realization that there's a lot of rhetoric, but there's not a lot of action. While Trump talks one way, he needs a good economy. If he can't run on a good economy, he cannot win in 2020.
US and China have already imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of one another's goods, creating uncertainty for businesses and weighing on the global economy. The International Monetary Fund has said that the escalation of US-China trade tension was one factor to have contributed to a significantly weakened global expansion late last year as it cut its 2019 global growth forecast. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. South Africa's ruling African National Congress ANC party is on course to win the parliamentary elections. However, widespread anger over corruption and high unemployment means that the party's victory margin is much reduced. The results announced by South Africa's Electoral Commission on Friday said that the ANC, headed by President Cyril Ramaphosa, had won 57.7% of the vote during Wednesday's poll, with more than 96% of the votes counted. The party, which has been in power since 1994, won 62% of the support in the last general election in 2014. South Africans voting in parliamentary and provincial elections on Wednesday. Queues seen winding from various polling stations in the last hours. The general election took place 25 years after the country's transition from apartheid to democracy.
Me casting my vote, I expect change.
We need jobs. A lot of young people in South Africa are not working.
This was the most hotly contested election in South African history, with a record 48 parties on the ballot, 19 more than last time around, and nearly double the number that took part in the 1994 elections. The vote for a new parliament and 9 provincial legislatures was seen to be the toughest electoral test yet for the African National Congress, that is Nelson Mandela's former Liberation Party. The ANC led the fight against apartheid and has governed the country since 1994. However, the party has now hit a historic low percentage of votes, but has got enough votes to retain power. A sign that President Cyril Ramaphosa has failed to slow the accelerating decline in the party's popularity. The reason for this is anger among the voters over economy and land reforms. Last year in February, President Ramaphosa replaced scandal-plagued Jacob Zuma, who was forced to resign after 9 years dominated by corruption allegations and economic problems. Ramaphosa has vowed improving the economy and said that South Africa would never again see the rampant corruption of recent years.
The mandate that we are getting here is we must hasten service delivery. And I've been saying that I don't want any further excuses. I just want us to work and implementing our policies.
Apart from concerns over the economy and unemployment, apartheid in place from 1948 to 1994 legalized racial discrimination, privileging white people, and land ownership remained a contentious issue. The white minority still owns disproportionately more land than the black majority. Support for the ANC has fallen in every election since 2004, with the party taking 54% in 2016 municipal elections compared with 62% in 2014's national vote. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. 2 Reuters journalists jailed in Myanmar under the country's Official Secrets Act for reporting on a massacre of Rohingya civilians have been freed after more than 500 days. Walon and Kyaw Soo walked free on Tuesday from Yangon's jail. The pair, who received this year's Pulitzer Prize for International Reporting, had been locked up since December 2017, then when they were charged under the country's Official Secrets Act for allegedly disseminating secret information sensitive to national security. The two men were released as part of an amnesty of more than 6,000 prisoners by the country's president. Emotional scenes as journalists jailed in Myanmar for their reporting on the Rohingya crisis were freed. Reuters journalist Walon and Kyaw Soo Oo were released after a presidential amnesty. The men were reunited with their families shortly after leaving prison. Walon's wife discovered she was pregnant after her husband was arrested. He has met his young daughter only a few times when she has been able to visit him in jail. But now he is reunited with his family. Kyaw Soo also has a 3-year-old daughter.
Inside in the prison and also around the world, people who are wishing to release us. So I would like to say thank you very much for everything. I'm really happy and excited to see my family and my colleagues. And I can't wait to go my newsroom.
The two journalists spent more than 500 days in prison on the outskirts of Yangon. They had been convicted under the Official Secrets Act and sentenced to 7 years in jail last September. Their jailing was seen as an assault on press freedom and raised questions about Myanmar's democracy.
We are enormously pleased that Myanmar has released our courageous reporters, Walon and Kyaw Soo Oo. Since their arrest 511 days ago, they have become symbols of the importance of press freedom around the world. We welcome their return.
The two released journalists are Myanmar citizens who were working for international news agency Reuters. They had been collecting evidence about the murders of 10 Rohingya men by the army in the village of Indin in North Rakhine in September 2017. They were arrested before the report's publication. The final report, a collaboration with other journalists, was considered extraordinary because it gathered testimonies from a range of participants, including Buddhist villagers who confessed to killing Rohingya Muslims and torching their homes. Accounts from paramilitary police also directly implicated the military. The journalists were awarded the Pulitzer Prize for International Reporting in May. The journalists were released to Lord R.R. Darcy, a British surgeon who has served as a member of an advisory group to Myanmar's government, and a Reuters representative.
And it took time. It took time because there is a strong belief in this country on the judiciary and seeing the whole pathway of the law taking its course. And I was absolutely delighted. This is an amazing day. It's a day that we should all celebrate and also reflect on where this country is going and how we can use dialogue with the international community to drive the improvement that are necessary.
The journalists were released along with thousands of other prisoners as part of mass amnesties that take place annually around Myanmar's New Year. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And in World Panorama, we'll take a very short break, and more international news that made headlines this week will continue on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching World Panorama. The news from Turkey, where the country's election board has ordered a rerun of the Istanbul mayoral vote. President Erdogan's AKP party had lodged a complaint and had demanded the rerun of the neck-and-neck race in the metropolis. The AKP party claimed that there were irregularities that invalidate the vote. However, the decision to hold a new poll on 23rd of June sparked protests across Istanbul on Monday. While Erdogan says that rerun of the vote was the best step for the country, opposition claims that it was dictatorship. Istanbul is Turkey's biggest city and its commercial heart. Politically too, it is significant, the biggest prize. So, when President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's party, AKP, lost the Istanbul mayoral election by a razor-thin margin against the opposition CHP in March, the defeat was crushing. This was President's hometown, where his party had ruled since the 1990s and where he launched his political career as a mayor in 1994. After the loss, Erdogan's party AKP claimed that the election was blighted by voter fraud and called for a rerun. The country's Supreme Election Council also voted in favor of a rerun to be held on 23rd of June.
Bir takım kirli ellerin işin içine girdiği ve
I hope the decision will be good for Istanbul as well as for our country. As politicians, we see this decision as the right step to strengthen our willpower to solve our problems within the law and democracy.
Tam kanunsuzluk, usulsüzlük hali olduğuna samimi olarak inanıyoruz.
However, opposition party CHP called the decision plain dictatorship. Experts say that Electoral Council's decision to accept the claims of voter fraud made by Erdogan's party and the subsequent wiping of results showed a worryingly new level of government influence over a supposedly independent body. The decision to hold a new vote sparked protests across the country on Monday. Hundreds of people gathered in several districts, banging pots and pans and shouting anti-government slogans.
Demokrasimize büyük bir darbe vurulmuştur.
This is a big blow to our democracy. We have to repair this together. Let us say this to our people and to residents of Istanbul. Everything is going to be all right.
Dediğim gibi tüm süreci Genel Başkanımız
The EU and leading member states have sharply criticized the decision to rerun Istanbul's mayoral election. An EU spokesperson called on Turkey's electoral body to explain the controversial decision without delay. Germany has called the rerun as incomprehensible. The move was also criticized by the French government. Municipal elections took place across Turkey on 31st of March and were seen as a referendum on Erdogan's leadership amid a sharp economic downturn. Although an AKP party-led alliance won 51% of the vote nationwide, the opposition CHP claimed victory in the capital Ankara, Izmir and in Istanbul. In Istanbul, opposition candidate İmamoğlu was declared the winner by a margin of less than 14,000 votes.
The election was held and the people made up their mind. We should not disrespect people's will. Despite all that, we still have confidence in law. Opposition candidate İmamoğlu will win this election again and people's will is going to be accepted.
Since large anti-government Gezi Park protests in 2013, Erdogan's popularity has waned. Now, a rerun of Istanbul election will be held on 23rd of June, this being one of the most significant elections in Turkey against the backdrop of heightened social unrest and a fragile national economy. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And here is a look at some more international news in Global Buzz. Sri Lanka's President Maithripala Sirisena says that 99% of the suspects in the Easter Sunday attacks on churches and hotels have been arrested and their explosive materials seized, and that it is safe for the tourists to return to the Indian Ocean island nation. Sirisena also said that he was not told of the near specific advance information from the Indian intelligence sources describing the plot and providing names and whereabouts of the attackers in at least 3 instances. More than 250 people were killed in coordinated suicide bombings carried out by Sri Lankan militants at churches full of people celebrating Easter services and at luxury hotels in the capital Colombo, popular with the foreign tourists. The older of the 2 students accused of opening fire in a suburban Denver high school, killing 1 classmate and injuring 8 others, was held on Wednesday on murder and attempted murder charges. The 18-year-old suspect, being charged as an adult, made an initial appearance on Wednesday. His accused accomplice, who is under the age of 18 and has not been publicly identified, is being charged separately as a juvenile. The two teenagers are accused of opening fire on fellow students in two classrooms at a STEM school in Highlands Ranch. There is no clarity still on the motive in the attack. The US has imposed harsh sanctions on Iran as the tensions surge between the decades-long rivals. President Donald Trump issued an executive order on Wednesday to sanction Iran's steel, aluminium, copper and iron sectors, which provide crucial foreign currency earnings for its crippled economy. Donald Trump also threatened further action unless Tehran fundamentally changed its behavior. The US's move came after Tehran earlier said that it was quitting parts of the 2015 nuclear agreement with the world powers, which Washington had abandoned in 2018. And on to the other top story this week. 41 people died after a Russian plane made an emergency landing and burst into flames just after takeoff from a Moscow's airport. Investigations are continuing into the cause of the fire, but survivors suggest that the plane was struck by lightning. The country's transport minister has said that there is no reason to ground the fleet of Sukhoi aircraft, which is the leading civilian passenger jet developed in Russia since the days of the Soviet Union. The Sunday's fire incident is Russia's deadliest aviation accident in several years. A Sukhoi Superjet 100-passenger plane en route to the northwestern Russian city of Murmansk caught fire on Sunday. Before an emergency landing in Moscow, the aircraft crashed, bouncing along the tarmac before the rear part of the plane suddenly burst into flames. As a result of the fire, 40 passengers and one crew member out of the total 78 on board lost their lives. All the bodies of the victims have been recovered.
Bodies of the all 41 victims have been recovered. 33 out of 37 survivors are passengers. 27 of them are in good health, while the other 6 are receiving treatment in the hospital, with no life-threatening injuries reported.
The investigative committee of the Russian Federation is looking into the possibilities behind the cause of the deadly plane fire. But many survivors say the aircraft was struck by lightning moments before it crashed. The pilot also told the media that the lightning had interrupted communication with air traffic controllers and forced him to switch to emergency manual mode. So far, the 2 black boxes from the plane have been retrieved for study, together with fuel samples from the plane's tanks and filling station, recordings of the conversation between the pilots, and the recordings from surveillance cameras. The investigators are also questioning eyewitnesses, airport employees and relatives of the victim. The aircraft left the airport at 6 p.m. local time on Sunday, bound for Murmansk. The crew sent a distress signal when malfunctions occurred in bad weather shortly after takeoff. The aircraft then attempted 2 emergency landings. However, the operations of the Sukhoi Superjet 100 aircraft have not been suspended.
On behalf of the State Commission and myself personally, I want to express my condolences to the relatives of the victims and to those injured in this air catastrophe. There are no reason to ground Sukhoi Superjet 100.
Residents of the city of Murmansk brought flowers, candles and stuffed toys to the city center and the local airport on Monday to mourn the victims. Russian President Vladimir Putin expressed condolences to the families of the victims. The region of Murmansk announced a 3-day mourning period. Experts say lightning strikes can cause technical malfunctions, causing planes to divert or make emergency landings for precautionary reasons. But crashes following such incidents are rare. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And that is it in this episode of the program. I'll see you next week with a complete roundup of all international news stories in World Panorama. See you then. Thanks for watching and bye-bye.